the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Yes, that's right, everybody. Good morning. It's Friday. This is To The Point on GBNews and me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falarin-Amano, your TV, radio and online. We're here all the way through until midday. Latest evidence of Russian war crimes. Is it right that Rishi Sunak's wife is copping it? All that and much, much more as well.
Yes, make sure you get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be getting through those throughout the show. But first, it's the latest news.
A very good morning. It's just 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. President Zelensky says the situation in the city of Borodanka is significantly more dreadful than what happened in nearby Bucha, where civilians were killed by Russian soldiers. In the latest development, footage from Borodanka shows an apartment block in the city close to the capital that's been razed to the ground. Families looking for relatives watched diggers search through the rubble of an apartment block. Officials reported that 26 bodies were found under the debris. Well, Russian forces have fully withdrawn from the north of Ukraine back into Belarus and Russia. That's the latest intelligence from the UK Ministry of Defence. And their assessment is that some of those soldiers, though, that were likely now to be moved to fight in the Donbass region. The intelligence says Russian forces are still shelling cities in the east and the south of Ukraine, and they're making further advances. Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, has described criticism about his wife's non-domicile tax status as unpleasant, telling the Sun newspaper she hasn't done anything wrong. Now, Downing Street has denied leaking the information after claims were made in the Telegraph that it was a deliberate move to smear the Chancellor. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry told GB News she can't understand how Rishi Sunak's wife is not considered a UK resident.
Many people listening to this will think to themselves, I don't understand why it should be that somebody who's been living here for 8 years, bringing up her children here, is living in Downing Street in a taxpayer's flat, presumably aspires to be the wife of the next Prime Minister, is not paying tax on all her income, but only paying tax on a part of it, because she says that she's not here on permanent residency. That's a very odd thing to be happening.
Tower Bridge has been closed after climate activists have staged a protest. 2 Extinction Rebellion members are hanging from the bridge by suspension cords, and they've unfurled a banner that reads "End Fossil Fuels Now." City of London police say the bridge is closed in both directions whilst the incident is ongoing. Boris Johnson is going to host the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz at Downing Street later to discuss how to help European countries wean themselves off Russian gas. The UK has pledged to end all imports of Russian coal and oil by the end of 2022, with gas to follow as soon as possible. Germany faced criticism from Ukraine and other European nations with claims it's been too slow to phase out Russian energy. Boris Johnson has failed to rule out another lockdown should a new coronavirus variant appear. Currently, hospital admissions in England due to COVID have reached the highest level since January 2021. Well, speaking exclusively to GB News, the Prime Minister said he wouldn't take any options off the table in tackling the virus.
I can't rule out something, Esther. I can't, say that we wouldn't be forced to do non-pharmaceutical interventions again of the kind that we did. I think it would be irresponsible of any leader, in any democracy, to say that they're going to rule out something that could save life.
Well, Boris Johnson was speaking with Conservative MPs Esther McVey and Philip Davis. You can watch the full interview on Saturday Selection tomorrow at 10 a.m. here on GB News. Now into travel. Airports and airlines have been criticised by the Civil Aviation Authority for failing to recruit enough staff to meet the recent demand for passenger travel. The body's chief executive, Richard Moriarty, has condemned disruption experienced by passengers trying to get away for the Easter holidays. He says late notice cancellations and excessive delays are distressing for customers, and they also have the potential to impact confidence levels across the industry. Today, Manchester Airport has asked passengers to prepare for long queues and to arrive 3 hours before their flight to avoid missing it. A Palestinian who opened fire in a Tel Aviv bar, killing 2 people, has been shot and killed by Israeli security forces. Following a manhunt through the city, the Israeli officers located the man hiding near a mosque in Jaffa. It's the latest in a series of deadly street assaults in the country. Scientists have successfully reversed the ageing process in human skin cells by 30 years. Researchers say they've been able to partly restore the function of older cells, as well as renew the biological age. Experts say the findings could revolutionise regenerative medicine. You're up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, let's head back to the Point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin Iman, and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up to kickstart your day, so here's what's on the menu.
OK, so Prime Minister Boris Johnson tells GB News' Esther McVey and Philip Davies he cannot rule out another lockdown in the future. We'll bring you more of that interview and speak to a political commentator about these comments. But where are you on this? Would you ever comply with another lockdown again? GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, and the Ministry of Defence says Russian troops have fully withdrawn from northern Ukraine. This is as Volodymyr Zelensky says the destruction being uncovered in the recaptured town of Borodyanka is worse than what has been seen in Bucha. We'll bring you the latest.
Yeah, some harrowing images coming out of there already today. The Prime Minister weighs in on the trans debate, by saying biology is important when it comes to trans athletes competing in women's sports.
We'll be here.
Yes, well, there you go. Yeah, Boris Johnson finally saying what most people think. But anyway, we're speaking to a feminist campaigner about whether his comments are, quotes, controversial. They shouldn't be.
We have all that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure you get in touch with your views, GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, it's a bit of a scoop, this, really. So Prime Minister Boris Johnson has told GB News that he would not rule out another lockdown. So in an interview with Esther McVey and Philip Davies, the Prime Minister was asked about the last 2 years of COVID restrictions and the UK's ambition for the future. Here's what he had to say when asked about future lockdowns.
I can't rule out something, Esther. I can't, say that we wouldn't be forced to do non-pharmaceutical interventions again of the kind that we did. But I think we've learnt a lot, and I think we would really try to go for the earliest possible programme of inoculation and vaccination. I mean, that was
the lockdowns again.
Look, I think it would be irresponsible of any leader, in any democracy, to say that they're going to rule out something that could save life. And I believe that the things that we did saved lives. There could be, I've got to be absolutely frank with you, there could be a new variant, more deadly. There could be a variant that affects children badly, that we really need to contain. I'm not going to take any options off the table.
And you can watch the exclusive interview with the Prime Minister in full on the Saturday selection tomorrow at 10 a.m. right here on GB News. I mean, what did you make of those comments, Patrick?
It's a bit of a mixed bag for me, this, because I can completely understand the idea of not wanting to say that you'll categorically rule out any future lockdowns. At the end of the day, we don't necessarily know what's around the corner, but I think it is quite anxiety-inducing, this idea, isn't it, that at any moment, I suppose, there could be a lockdown. But unless there was an absolutely very genuine, very terrible new variant that was spreading like wildfire through our community, then I don't see why, because then I think they'd have to acknowledge that the vaccines aren't as good as they thought, and I don't think they're going to do that. Yeah,
but also, I mean, I don't know how effective the lockdown were if you balance it out with the harms that lockdown caused. And I think that we're now obviously paying for that with the rise in national insurance and all of the is impacting the cost of living squeeze. So another lockdown undoubtedly will cause a whole another series of adverse impacts, such as the cancelled and delayed cancer appointments and so on. So there's always balances to be put in place there.
Indeed. Well, here to give his reaction is political commentator Dr. John Coulter. Thank you very much, Dr. John. Great to have you on the show. Let's just react initially to that lockdown stuff before we get into more of a discussion about Rishi Sunak's wife. What do you make of Boris Johnson's comments there about not ruling out another lockdown?
Well, good morning, folks. Is the Prime Minister having a laugh with us? I mean, how on earth is he going to sustain the credibility of another lockdown, given Partygate? And as well as that, who's going to enforce the lockdown? I would think that a more sensible situation would be if the medical folks tell us, look, there's another dangerous variant coming and we need vaccination against it. That's okay. What I would be more in favour of suggesting to the Prime Minister is form a series of what I'm going to call liberated zones across the country. These are areas of the country, of the United Kingdom, that are medically totally free of any variant of the virus. And if you want to enter that liberated zone, you've got to have a passport to A, show that you're inoculated, and B, that you do not have any strain of COVID. Now, that might sound pretty tough, but we've seen from the death rates that COVID is a real killer. And we don't want another situation where day in, day out, we have the daily death rates going up and up. So, yes, on one hand, I understand the Prime Minister wants to keep lockdown on the table. But on the other hand, he's got to realise the damage which Partygate did, his credibility, to the lockdown restriction credibility. I mean, why should I observe lockdown whenever parties were going on in 10 Downing Street? Why should I observe all these restrictions and stay in my home? I have a severely autistic son, so the impact that he had, that lockdown had on him was quite severe, and we're still suffering from that, even though lockdown has ended. So why should I bother whenever the Prime Minister doesn't bother?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Cotter, the hypocrisy point, I think, is a pertinent point for a lot of people. But in some senses, the Prime Minister's comments also vindicate those lockdown sceptics who were saying that actually it was described as an unprecedented move. This was incredibly rare. This is something that, has never happened. And actually, it became normalised and part of the toolbox that the government then had in order to respond to health crises, if you will. So isn't this vindicating that perspective that the lockdown is no longer regarded as something that you should never use unless it's under a very rare and extreme circumstances, and is now part and parcel of the government toolbox?
Yes, I've absolutely no doubt it's part and parcel, as you say, of the government toolbox. But I think in building that toolbox, it has to have the right tools in the toolbox to be an effective toolbox. So I think from that point of view, what you're looking at there is more in-depth planning, so that if a lockdown comes, the government, the medical profession, everyone is ready for it from that point of view. I'm not ruling it out. The one area that I would be very strong on is in combating the anti-vaxxers if another vaccine is needed to combat any new variant. I think that basically I am strongly pro-vaccine in terms of combating the COVID. So from that point of view, we need to ensure that the conspiracy theories around the vaccines or the fears around the vaccines are well and truly put to bed.
OK, all right, let's just move on now and have a chat about Rishi Sunak's partner, his wife, indeed. Whether or not she did anything wrong when she registered herself as a non-dom for tax purposes. Now, of course, apparently it's sparing her from paying around 20 million in UK tax for her overseas earnings. Rishi Sunak has said that basically she's done nothing wrong and leave my wife out of it, all right? Where are you standing on this?
Well, certainly, yes, he has a very valid point. The Sunaks have a very valid point in that
Have lost.
Sunak's got to him. Clearly, that's what it is. Oh, now I'm over there. Fantastic stuff. All right, OK, well.
What do you make of it? I mean, I definitely understand, there is no accusation that she's done anything illegal or criminal, and I think that is an important point to state. But it doesn't look... Apparently, we have John Coulter with us.
Back for more. John, sorry, we thought Sunak had cut you off. Go on, what were you saying?
Did I say something about the Prime Minister and MI5 cut me off? Basically, what I was saying there was Rishi, the Sunaks have every right to say that it is their own business. But we've got to remember, we're also in an election campaign right throughout the United Kingdom. So the big problem is not so much what Mrs. Sunak did or didn't do, what she did pay or didn't pay, but how will this affect the Tories in their election campaign? Because when election fever really kicks in, you're in a situation there whereby perception can be as dangerous as reality. So that in reality, the Sunaks can argue we've done nothing wrong, but the perception is, look at the number of people who are living on the poverty line below the poverty line, about to fall into the poverty trap. And here is someone who is basically maybe tax dodging, allegedly.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And it's the timing of it, and it's just the look of it. I suppose there is also a wider point as well as to exactly where all this stuff has come out from. Downing Street has been moved to say that they had nothing to do with these leaks. I think there seems to be some kind of implication that potentially they were. But we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, Dr. John. Thank you very much. You have to come back on very soon. Dr. John Coulter.
Thank you.
There.
I mean, yeah, the Daily Mail front cover today is talking about allies of Rishi Sunak saying it's a political hit job, and they're speculating that it has something to do with number 10. But, you know, hit job or not, I think that this is something that, you know, rightfully is in the public interest. You know, when you have a Chancellor of the Exchequer that is, you know, raising people's taxes, actually making life harder for a lot of people financially, then a lot of people do ask questions as to why sometimes it does feel that, you know, most of us don't have the option to have non-dom status.
No.
You know, and so I do think it is a story in the public interest.
No, I agree completely. I think it's a story that's in the public interest, but I don't think it should be an absolutely massive story in the sense of, well, the fact that they haven't really done anything wrong. I think it's something interesting to note, something that public should be aware of, but I don't think really it should be an absolutely massive issue. But as our political commentator said there, the way that it's perceived, you know, in pubs up and down the country when people are struggling to afford the price of a pint or this, that and the other, and it's just something that will be in people's minds, won't it? Well, actually, hang on a minute, you know, £20 million is quite a lot of money to not pay in tax, I suppose, but there we go. After the break, former MP Brooks Newmark joins us from a refugee centre in Poland where he's helping Ukrainians fleeing the war to find safe passage. But first, it's your weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A cold start out there, frost and ice fairly widely, but there'll be some sunshine and it'll be a day of sunny spells and showers for many of us. Low pressure's moving away to the east. Another low just skirting the south coast is bringing thicker cloud and will continue to bring some outbreaks of rain to southern coastal counties of England. Now that's kept things frost-free in the far south, but otherwise it's a widely chilly start with some icy patches for northern Scotland. And we're going to see some sunshine in places through the rest of the day, but also showers building. And those showers will continue to be of a wintry mix, so rain, hail, sleet at lower levels, snow over the higher ground, particularly for North Wales, Northern England and Scotland. I think 8 or 9 Celsius for Manchester, Newcastle, 12 Celsius in the south of England, colder still for the north of Scotland, where we'll continue to see a brisk wind from the north. We'll continue to see showers coming through on Friday night, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but otherwise, once again, widely clear skies and plummeting temperatures with a widespread frost, some slippery surfaces around first thing Saturday, and a chilly start for all of us. But Saturday looks less windy and less showery. In fact, for many places, it stays sunny throughout much of the day. We'll continue to see some showers for parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, North West England and North Wales. But the further south and east you are, the brighter and drier it will be, with temperatures rising, and 11, 12 Celsius in the south will feel quite pleasant with light winds and the strong sun at this time of year. 8 or 9 degrees there for Manchester, for Newcastle, for Glasgow. Not feeling quite as pleasant as it turns cloudier through the day with a few showers around. Sunday looks dry and bright for most of us, and it's going to turn milder during Sunday, Monday and into Tuesday.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Yes, well, good morning, everyone. It's 10:21. Happy Friday. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Flowering-Man on GBNews, live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, Tower Bridge is closed after climate activists staged a protest. Our national reporter Paul Hawkins joins us live to give us more.
Which very shortly. Yes, there he is. I believe Paul will join us very, very shortly. We can just see him there. We've got a little cheek peek of Paul. Thank you very much, Paul. Cheers for hot-footing it down to Tower Bridge. What's going on? Oh. That's all right, don't worry, we'll reconnect with Paul later on. I tell you what, I can fill you in a little bit about what's been going on, actually, because basically some climate activists have strung themselves up on Tower Bridge. They're swinging by a long rope, basically, underneath the bridge. They've got a big banner that says "End Fossil Fuels Now," and I mean, it's kind of problem that I think could be solved with a pair of scissors, don't you?
Look, it seems to me that this particular protest isn't as effective as the last ones have because, I mean, by and large, the government has adopted their policies. I mean, the government, through the climate change conference that went on COP26, was pretty much one of the loudest, most strongest advocates for greener, cleaner energy and pushing forward with net zero. So I don't really know what they're arguing for, given that the government has almost wholeheartedly embraced their policies. Yeah,
it does all seem a little bit much. I mean, I'm all for people protesting, don't get me wrong, but from what we can see there anyway, you know, they're dangling down from Tower Bridge and, you know, again, I just don't understand really why, if you do that kind of thing, sometimes actions have consequences, and it would be a shame, wouldn't it, if that rope was to be severed? But even the banner "End Fossil Fuels Now," I think at least 60% of global energy comes from fossil fuels. So it's actually literally impossible to end fossil fuels now. So it's just pointless, counterproductive, wasting everybody's time, and it just seems to be, you know, for their own personal benefit rather than improving the country. Yeah, it does, and I think part of it, we have to accept this with this lot, is that they don't want a lot of the modern amenities that we have in society, for example. They don't want a lot of, you know, the modern luxuries or anything like that. They would be, in my opinion anyway, perfectly happy with us all kind of living in caves and using moss for bedding. But, you know, apparently they're, you know, that's really why I think, anyway, that's why I think, really, anyway, that we can't, you know, that's why they're doing it. Yeah? I mean, other than a gap year, like in the Amazon, it doesn't seem to me that these people have any idea what it's really like to live with no electricity, live with no energy sources. You know, it's a hard slog. You know, you won't live as long. You know, your food is scarce and incredibly difficult to come by, and you know, infant mortality is incredibly high. I would like them to live what it's actually like to live in a materially deprived society which doesn't use as much energy as we do in modern existence. Well, someone's getting in touch already. Hi, these protesters are bolstered by the mainstream media, apparently, basically saying, well, we're copping it a little bit here. No name on this one. I think it might be Roderick, actually. Good name. Just saying, look, why are you giving them airtime? I suppose, yeah, but I mean, it is news, isn't it? And so we do kind of have to do it. But I agree with you, Patrick. Just cut the ropes. That's from Dwight. Of course, we couldn't possibly be condoning that kind of behaviour. Tower Bridge, why close the road? Just leave them there and they'll soon give up and realise there's no point. That's Bernard. I did suspect we should have done something similar when those people kind of use their neckties to go after the oil tankers. I think we could easily fool this lot, get a few fake oil tankers, let them chain themselves to it and then just leave them there. Anyway, moving on from all of that, just for now, we'll go back to Paul very shortly, don't worry. But keep these views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We're off to Ukraine now, aren't we?
Yes, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned the Kiev suburb of Borodyanka has faced much more horrific atrocities committed by Russian soldiers than those already seen in Bucha.
Well, discoveries of bodies strewn across the streets of Bucha this week, as well as the stories of mass rape by Russian soldiers, even more coming out this morning, actually, has prompted global outcry and accusations of ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Ukrainian people.
Yes, as thousands more Ukrainians attempt to flee, let's cross now to former Conservative MP Brooks Newmark, who is doing his part to help refugees find safe passage. Thank you for joining us this morning. Brooks, could you just tell us the situation where you are?
Yeah, hi. I'm actually in Fromborg, which is a refugee centre run by the Catholic community here, and they've taken in three families really from close to the Belarus border, who actually look after children with special needs. And so broadly at the moment I'm visiting various refugee centres, but my main objective for the past 3 weeks has been trying to get Ukrainian women and children out of Ukraine and into the safety of Poland. And that's been my primary objective. Over the past 3 weeks, I've managed to move 6,383 women and children from Ukraine into Poland.
What are some of the human stories that you've heard so far, then?
Look, I think, so for example, this morning, the families that I met here in Fromborg, and it's run by the priests here. You know, they were saying to me that the children in particular were extremely traumatized. And when the symptom of trauma is they were very silent, incommunicative, and so on. It's now been a good 2 weeks since they've been here. They've opened up. And but the trauma in particular, it's not, it is particularly the children that I'm most concerned with. And the children have been very, very traumatized by their experience.
I can imagine. It just seemed like an unrelenting story of absolute horror, destruction, rape, massacre, murder, explosions. I mean,
yeah, I've actually got an interesting story for you. So there was, with one of the women that I met who'd actually come up from Mariupol. When the Russians came into her house, they were shouting, "Where are the Nazis? Where are the Nazis?" And she's saying, "There are no Nazis here. Like, what are you talking about?" She says, No. Where are the Nazis? And they went through the whole house, breaking down doors, looking under beds, looking for these sort of invisible Nazis that Putin have been talking about. It's ridiculous, this war.
Well, this is it, and it just points to a bit of a lot actually of the propaganda that's going on in Russia, clearly feeding into this narrative that Ukraine is riddled full of Nazis and that they are there to genuinely try to cleanse the pool, I suppose, as it were, which, as far as I can tell anyway, does not seem to be the case. What's the next step for these people that are coming here now, then? So are they going to try to remain, did you say, in Poland, is it? Or some going to try to make it to the UK?
I think so. I think, to be honest, most of the people I've met, don't forget, all the men have pretty much stayed behind in Ukraine to fight. So they've left their brothers, their fathers, their sons behind. So they want to remain as close as possible to their families. So I would say the majority of refugees that I've met in Poland, and by the way, the Poles have done an amazing job. They're hosting 2 million refugees at the moment, 2 million. And we've, at the moment, I think have taken in 29,000 in the UK. So they've taken in 2 million, have been incredibly hospitable, looking after them well. But I think, to answer your question, the majority want to remain close to home. They keep hoping, and hoping against hope perhaps, that this war will end soon and they can go back to their families. The reality is, though, and you and your viewers have seen the absolute destruction in towns like Bucha, in Mariupol, in Irpin, and so on, is it's going to be at least a year or so they're here while they try and rebuild the country, even if the war ended today.
Look, thank you very, very much. That is, of course, former Conservative MP Brooks Newmark there. You're doing good work, Brooks, and you should be commended for it. Thank you so much. Right,
Yeah.
OK, look, bit of a shift this now, people, because the man who killed Sabina Nessa has just been sentenced, and we're going to go over for the very latest on that now with Rosie Wright.
It's 10:30. We've got breaking news for you here at GB News. The man who killed Sabina Nessa has been sentenced to life in prison and must serve at least 36 years behind bars after pleading guilty to her murder. Christys Mercy from Eastbourne. He killed the school teacher in a park in southeast London last September as she walked to meet up with friends. Well, to give us background on the case, here's our reporter, Alice Porter.
On the 17th of September, the day of Sabina Nessa's murder, Mercy checked into the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne after propositioning his estranged wife for sex in the car park. She refused. Hotel staff found his behaviour strange and called the police, but no action was taken. Mercy later drove around 70 miles to Kidbrooke in southeast London. He has no known connection to the area. He saw Sabina Nessa walking through the park and struck her with a metal emergency traffic triangle around 34 times and then killed her by asphyxiation. A brutal killing which will forever haunt her family.
We had lost our sister. My parents have lost their daughter.
The murder took place 6 months after the killing of Sarah Everard and raised serious questions over women's safety in London. The police say Mercy's killing of Sabina Nessa was sexually motivated. During the trial, it also emerged that Mercy's wife had experienced domestic violence.
We spoke to his wife, who was clearly shocked and very upset by all of this, and it was during them quite sensitive interviews that she disclosed to police that she'd been previously assaulted by him, actually throttled on 3 separate occasions, matters which had not been previously reported to the police.
Police say Mercy had no criminal record in the UK, nor in Albania, where he was from. And for someone to suddenly kill in this way is highly unusual. But today, justice is finally served for the murder of Sabina Nessa, a much-loved teacher described by her family as kind, generous, loving and determined. Alice Porter, GB News.
Now, Alice has been at the Old Bailey for us this morning as we hear the news of the sentencing. We'll go live to her shortly, but just a reminder, the man who killed Sabina Nessa, Christys Mercy, has been sentenced 36 years at least behind bars, having pled guilty to her murder. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on that, but right now let's give you a brief overview of what else is happening today. And let's go to Ukraine, where the President, Volodymyr Zelensky, has said the situation in the city of Borodanka is significantly more dreadful than what happened in nearby Bucha, where civilians were killed by Russian soldiers. In the latest development, there's been footage from Borodanka that shows an apartment block in the city. The city's quite close to the capital, Kyiv, and that apartment block has been razed to the ground. Families looking for relatives watched diggers search through the rubble of the apartment block. Officials reported that 26 bodies have been found under debris. Well, Russian forces have fully withdrawn from the north of Ukraine back into Belarus and Russia. That's the latest intelligence from the UK Ministry of Defence, and their assessment is that some of those soldiers, though, will be likely to be moved now back to fight in the Donbas region. The intelligence says Russian forces are still shelling cities in the east and south of Ukraine, and they're making further advances. It's 10:33. You're up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and your DAB Plus radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with The Point shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
It's 10:36. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin-Eman and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yeah, well, the murderer of primary school teacher Sabina Nessa, Christys Mercy, has been sentenced this morning to a minimum of 36 years behind bars. For a reaction now, let's talk to Peter Blexley, who's former Scotland Yard detective, joins us now. Peter, thank you very much. An absolutely shocking crime, but maybe a fitting sentence, do you think?
Well, 36 years, of course, is a substantial amount of time, and it is the minimum time that he will serve. If in 36 years' time he's deemed to still be a danger to the general public, then he won't be released. However, some people still might think this is not enough, and that a life sentence should mean exactly that, a whole life sentence.
Indeed, yeah.
I mean, he hadn't had previous convictions, if I am correct. I mean, how do you spot the signs at all of people like this?
Well, sadly and unfortunately, although I'm not about to apportion blame in any way, his wife had been subjected to violence at his hands beforehand. On 3 separate occasions, she reported to police eventually that he had tried to strangle her. So whilst he didn't have previous criminal convictions, there is an escalation in his behaviour. And I think a message to be taken from this tragic murder of Sabina is that those who are subjected to domestic abuse in any way, shape or form must please simply find the courage to come forward and report it.
Yeah, a slightly wider picture here of just about our prison system, really, because one of the arguments that I keep hearing about against, whole life tariffs and something the other is maybe a lack of prison space or lack of prison resources, for example. Do we just need more prisons?
Not necessarily, because building more prisons and throwing people in jail for far lesser offences than this ghastly crime is not necessarily always the answer. I have certainly found in my dealings with people who have served long jail terms, not for murder, but for other criminality, gangster-type crimes, is that when they're locked up for a substantial period, actually the prison authorities kind of get an opportunity over a number of years to work on these people, for these people to confront their offending, their previous behaviours, and sometimes come out reformed and then contribute to society. But if I may, I'd just like to raise what I think is a red flag about Selimaj and his behaviour yesterday. Right. You may remember he refused to attend court to be sentenced yesterday. So that, for me, spells danger for the prison authorities, because there is a reluctance by this ghastly individual to face justice, to appreciate the consequences of his actions. And that, for me, spells danger, because he might not be able to handle the sentence that's that's been handed down today, and therefore he may seek to take his own life rather than face the consequences. Please, the prison system, be on red alert for that, and do not allow this man to take the easy way out.
No, I just think that's a really, really fantastic point, actually. I did wonder something similar maybe about Wayne Couzens as well, as far as we're aware at the minute. He's still alive. So. But, I did. It was an interesting point, though, because I think all too often they do take the coward's way out, because they are cowards a lot of the time, these people, aren't they?
Fred West, Harold Shipman, and many others, unfortunately. They do not want to face the everyday consequences for the rest of their natural lives of paying the price for what they've done, and they take that way out. So, and I'm always disappointed when that happens.
I mean, some people would say that even if some of those people do face the consequences and, no longer pose a danger, that the act is so horrendous and so horrific that regardless, they should never be released, and punishment ultimately should be the priority. Where do you stand? Are you do you think punishment or rehabilitation, or where do you lean on that?
Punishment without rehabilitation is, quite frankly, a waste of time. Some people, of course, are beyond the pale and cannot be rehabilitated. And on that note, look at the ridiculous situation we had not so many months ago when Colin Port was released from prison, having murdered 2 separate women. And of course, within a matter of weeks, his behaviour had escalated so badly that he was rightfully taken back into prison. He should never have been released in the first place.
Yeah, this is it. And you just mentioned there, you touched on a point about some people potentially being beyond reform. I've made similar points about maybe some jihadis, for example, or people like this. Do you think that those people, actually can ever actually be reformed? Because there'll always be a danger to society. That's my concern. Why take the risk? Like with that guy, Colin Pitchfork.
Colin Pitchfork, forgive me.
No, that's right. Why would we even take that risk? You wouldn't move him in next to your granddaughter, would you? Or you wouldn't let him sleep in your spare room. Why should he be out near anyone else's, No,
absolutely. Some people are quite simply beyond rehabilitation. They can never be safe to go on the streets, which is why this sentence handed down today, for example, is a minimum term of 36. If he's still a danger all those decades later, then he will not be released. We sincerely hope.
Peter, thank you very much. Great to have you in the studio, and see you again. Peter Blexley there, of course, just reacting really to this sentencing. But we can actually get a little bit more reaction now, because our London reporter, Alice Porter, joins us now outside the Old Bailey. Thank you very much, Alice. What can you tell us?
Hi there, good afternoon. Well, we heard from Mr Justice Sweeney that Stella Marsh will receive a life sentence with a minimum term of 36 years due to the severity of the crime. He agreed with what the prosecution put forward, was that because of the sexual conduct involved with this crime, he would receive that sentence. And that's because there are many stages of this horrific crime which had a sexual element to it. 3 days before the murder took place, he booked into a hotel. On the day of the murder, he propositioned his ex-wife for sex in the car park of the hotel. She turned down that offer. He then drove around Brighton, and the prosecution say that was because he was looking for women to have sex with, whether consensual or not, and then going on and driving all the way to the Kidbrooke area. He spent 20 minutes walking around the park. They say he was looking for a victim, and then to have a young 28-year-old woman, a lone female, walking past was very much the perfect victim for him. And then we were all shown in court yesterday some very disturbing CCTV footage showing the moment in which he struck Sabina Nessa 34 times over the head with an emergency warning triangle. Her unconscious body was then moved out of sight where she was strangled, and there was also a sexual assault that is understood to have taken place as well. Parts of her clothing were removed, her underwear and tights were never found, and it was particularly because of this sexual element to it that Mr Justice Sweeney has increased the minimum term prison sentence. But there were also some other aspects that were put forward by the prosecution that Mr Justice Sweeney agreed with in regards to the fact that this was premeditated, and that while he had no criminal record, as you were just saying there earlier with your guest, he did have a record of domestic violence to his wife, and his wife has spoken up in this trial of the violence she's faced, including being throttled a number of times. So Mr Justice Sweeney said that this actually was a pattern of behaviour, and this is why he is given the minimum of a life sentence.
Alice, if that's OK, what some of the reaction to that sentence was, whether it was from the family or people just in the gallery generally, was it one of relief or not?
I think it was one that wasn't one of surprise, because Mr. Justice Sweeney said that he would be passing. He said it was inevitable he would be passing a life sentence yesterday. But there was quite a reaction, I think, from the family. I could see them at the front. They were very particularly emotional yesterday when some of the graphic evidence was shown, and very moving victim impact statements were read out, particularly from Jabina Islam, who's the sister of Sabina Nessa, who was incredibly distraught over her murder and gave a very moving testimony. But the family, quite understandably, were very moved in court today. But hopefully there will be at least some sense that justice has been served. I was saying that it was unusual in the sense that Selimaj had no criminal record. Of course, though, he did obviously commit acts of domestic violence, but I think there will at least hopefully be some sense that justice has at last been served for Sabina Nessa. Selimaj did not attend court today. He wasn't in court yesterday, and I think that has caused quite a lot of anger to the family. The police earlier in the week, when I was speaking with them, they described him as an evil coward, and I think his absence in court today, and also the fact that he has never expressed remorse for the horrendous attack that he committed, was in fact commented on by the judge in court today. And I think it is with that lack of remorse. He didn't, when he was questioned by police initially, he just said no comment, and it was only later that he actually pleaded not guilty, and it was for those reasons that Mr. Justice Sweeney imposed a life sentence with a minimum of 36 years.
Thank you so much, Alice Porter, for bringing us that report. I mean, it is just completely sickening, and I think the words evil coward is an incredibly apt description for that individual.
Yeah, disgusting bloke. Anyway,
I mean, a minimum of 36 years for a lot of people would be regarded as a substantial sentence. But even after that time, I'm of the view that it doesn't matter if he may or may not be reformed. I think he should be there for the rest of his life. He can rot, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I suspect that's a common view, actually. Right, well, we're just going to move away from that now, and we're over to Tower Bridge. Yes, this is right. So it's closed after climate activists staged a protest. Our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, joins us now with the latest. Paul, yes, here we go. So what's going on there, then? What's going on?
Well, Patrick, at the moment this protest has been ongoing since 7 a.m. Two protesters, Extinction Rebellion protesters, climbed onto the bridge and then lowered themselves down with ropes, which they then tied to the bridge. And if I just step out of shot, you can see there the protesters are still hanging from the bridge. And in fact, there's one on the left-hand side of the green banner, as you can see it, that says "End Fossil Fuels Now," and then there's one to the right. The one on the right is there is a protester in red jeans. They're accompanied there by a police officer who's wearing a red helmet, and they have been lowering themselves down to try and talk to the protesters. They can't bring them up because they're tied to the bridge at the moment. And then I don't know if you can see in shot, but just below there is a police riverboat with a number of officers on board, and then just to the left of us there is a Royal, if I just move out of the way here, just to the left over here there's a lifeboat, a Royal National RNLI boat there, just there. So that's what's going on at the moment. The bridge has been completely closed since 7 a.m, so what's that now, almost 4 hours. Traffic is gridlocked around the capital, and the key word in that banner, "End Fossil Fuels Now." The protesters saying that the government really needs to get its act together when it comes to weaning the country off fossil fuels. There was the government produced an energy strategy yesterday which came in for a lot of criticism. There wasn't enough in there about onshore solar farms, still too much of a reliance, critics like Extinction Rebellion say, on nuclear energy, on fracking, on extracting more oil and gas from the North Sea. And then at the start of the week we had that final warning from the UN as well, saying that governments around the world need to act now if they're going to reduce carbon emissions, half them by 2025. So the key word in that banner is "End Fossil Fuels Now," and that's why they're chaining themselves to the bridge. I've also got a statement as well here from Extinction Rebellion. I'll just read it to you now. It says, "The action has taken place at the gateway to the City of London London, the root source of fossil fuel funding in the UK, and on the eve of the April rebellion, which begins tomorrow at 10 a.m. in Hyde Park. And they also want to say that this protest now marks a decisive shift in tactics from non-violent civil disobedience to non-violent civil resistance tactics. So the key words there, that they're changing a disobedience to resistance, whatever that means. And this comes after 8 days of protests, of course, at oil facilities across the country. Those protests being held by Extinction Rebellion, also with Just Stop Oil, although this protest this morning, according to Just Stop Oil, it's nothing to do with them, just Extinction Rebellion.
Well, Paul Hawkins, thank you for bringing us that report. Paul Hawkins, our national reporter, giving us an update on some of the environmentalist protests going on in London, which is causing a lot of disruption and money. And, I completely, disagree with them, as we've alluded to. This idea that the government isn't acting now, that there isn't a strong move towards decarbonisation is frankly completely untrue. The government has just released its energy strategy, which, includes nuclear, which has been one of the reasons why, France, for example, have had way lower energy bills increase than we have. And fracking has been completely game-changing in reducing America's carbon emissions. So, frankly, it's completely for the birds what they're talking about.
It is. Bob's been in touch, GBViews, gbnews.uk, with actually a very good point. The police could at least remove the banner, couldn't they? They've got these...
Well, they have a right to protest.
But they've got, okay, if you can't winch this lot up, you could at least, because then it kind of,
just leaves them hanging.
It just leaves them hanging, for want of a better phrase, yes. But then that way they'd be more inclined probably to get up quicker. But as it stands currently, they're getting their message out there well and truly, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they know what they're doing in order to get a reaction, from the police, in order to get a reaction from the press. That's really what it is, to draw attention to themselves.
Absolutely. Look, absolutely. I'm just picking through some of our comments here now. Just when it comes to the Tower Bridge protesters, a lot of you do appear to be in favour of the taking a set of scissors to their ropes angle of it, but I imagine there are probably laws against that. But there we go. We're just going to move on just slightly onto one of our other main topics. And I know we wanted to have a chat about this actually anyway, about the murderer of Sabina Nessa, who's been sentenced today, if you are just joining us, to a minimum of 36 years behind bars. Harrowing crime, of course. Beat her to death. That was caught on CCTV, dragged her into the bushes, and then there was obviously a sexual assault element to it as well. Minimum 36 years in prison. Now, a lot of people are saying that basically the taxpayer shouldn't be paying. It's that death penalty argument again, isn't it, ladies and gents, about the taxpayer paying a lot of money every single year for him.
It is very interesting, because according to the polls, even during the time that the death penalty was abolished and so on, the public have consistently been majority actually in favour of it. But it was, taken a decision by Parliament, and it has been regarded as something that is broadly uncivilised, so to speak. And there is a powerful argument that actually people should have to bear the consequences. If we think it's cowardly that someone commits suicide, then why should we think it's okay to kill them? Ultimately, that's meaning that they're not going to have to face and mull over the impact of what they did for the rest of their life. But I think that the expense point is an important one. And why should these people breathe the air that we all share when they are poisoning society, quite frankly?
Oh, well, indeed. These reviews reflected as well by no name on this one, just saying 36 years is not enough. We need a referendum on bringing back the death sentence. It would be a yes from the people of this country. That's their view, of course.
I don't know if I trust the state to be able to carry out killings in that way. In some senses, I understand the death penalty in principle, but in practice, I very much worry that the countries that it is in practice, it's no evidence to me that it's a more humane or prevents people from conducting various different crimes. And so it seems to be more of a reaction that we want the death penalty, because I think, understandably, we don't believe those people deserve to live.
No, and I think we've seen kind of back-to-back cases on this, really. We had the murder of Arthur Lubganio Hughes, I believe, and obviously the Wayne Couzens, Sarah Everard incident. There's probably a couple of others that we could rake up as well, frankly. And, when these things keep happening and keep getting coverage, then that clamour for the death sentence does grow.
Well, just quickly, though, on the point that we were discussing before, I do think that there are certain patterns in these instances where there seems to be certain alarm bells that are not necessarily acted upon. And I think there could be some questions for institutions about, are they spotting, for example, children that are behaving strangely in their school, or people that may have a history of domestic violence? You know, are they convicting those people, charging them, even if, for example, the wife or the partner may not be comfortable with it?
Yeah.
I think we've got to look at institutional responses as well as ones that are harsher sentences.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no rehab in prison, and that was from Jeff. And we were kind of discussing this a bit before, weren't we, about to what extent someone like this can be rehabilitated, to what extent someone like a Wayne Couzens could be rehabilitated.
But also, to what extent should we even care if they're rehabilitated? Should they just be solely punished?
Yeah. Potentially, yeah. I mean, it is a tricky one. I mean, I know, for example, you know, that there are clamours amongst certain regions and areas now to have more prisons, so we can maybe give people longer prison sentences. But I suppose all of that costs money in itself, doesn't it? But keep your thoughts coming in, ladies and gentlemen, on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back with much more on today's top stories and plenty of your views after this very short break. Stay tuned.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The weekend will be fine and dry for most, and that's what we've got today. It's still pretty cold out there, however. The wind's perhaps not quite as strong as the past couple of days. And it's not dry and fine everywhere. This area of low pressure has been scooting its way up through the channel, bringing some wet conditions along the south coast. Certainly a pretty grim day across the Channel Isles. Wet and at times quite windy here. But that rain is edging away from the south coast. Many places dry and bright. We still have a cold wind blowing, particularly across the northeast, where we'll see some sleet showers, some snow over the hills. A few rain showers developing across southern England this afternoon as that wetter weather clears away. And for many, as I said, it's dry and it's bright. Temperatures below average for the time of year, still feeling pretty chilly, but out of the breeze, we might get up to 13 Celsius in the south. That wind, though, is still strong and still cold across the northeast. Still further snow showers over the high ground here into low levels. Showers could mean some icy conditions as well. The potential for a few showers across the southeast during the evening and overnight, but for many it becomes dry and clear, and temperatures certainly across northern Britain, much of Wales, will drop in rural areas down below freezing. So again, it could be icy across northeast Scotland as the showers keep coming in here on Saturday. A few showers dotted around elsewhere, parts of Wales and particularly northwest Scotland, turning a little wetter through the day. But for the vast majority, it's another dry, bright day with some good spells of sunshine, but it is still on the chilly side with temperatures struggling to get much beyond double figures, maybe 13 across the south. But again, those winds are lighter than they have been over recent days. Light winds and clear skies will allow frost to form for many as we head through Saturday night and into Sunday. Still some wet weather across Scotland, still some sleet and snow mixed in here. For many, Sunday starts with a frost, but again dry and bright, although it will cloud over in the west later. Maybe a few spots of rain for Northern Ireland. Signs of things getting warmer next week.
Tomorrow from 10 a.m, get set for a GB News exclusive interview with Prime Minister Boris Johnson as two of his most rebellious MPs put him on the spot. Brexit, COVID, and now the reality of war. How does the Prime Minister look back on the past 2 years? And what can he say about having been so close to death?
I then had a pretty groggy night and went down even lower.
An exclusive interview with Prime Minister Boris Johnson tomorrow from 10 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Fridays, Saturdays and Sunday afternoons here on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as my panel and I take on some of the top stories hitting the headlines.
You can look up the statistics.
No, you look it up. I hug everyone I We learn from it and try and move on. That's it. Opinion is at the heart of the show. It's a place for open and frank conversation, but without the fear of cancellation. So join me here on GB News on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons between 4 and 6 p.m.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Oh, morning everyone, happy Friday. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Anaya Falarin-Iman on your TV, radio and online. Massive show for you today, loads of huge topics and loads of discussion and expert guests, so what's not to love?
Yes, make sure you get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show, but first it's time for latest news.
A very good morning. It is 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date today on GB News. Now, some developing news. The man who killed Sabina Nessa has been sentenced to life in prison. He must serve at least 36 years behind bars after pleading guilty to her murder. Kochi Selimaj from Eastbourne killed the schoolteacher in a park in southeast London last September as she walked to meet up with friends. Well, during sentencing, the judge said it was cowardly of Selimaj to refuse to attend, but said he had no power to force him. Britain has sanctioned more individuals, including the adult daughters of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The United States also placed restrictions on them earlier this week. Britain's also sanctioned the children of Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The Foreign Office says more than £275 billion of Russian money has now been frozen by the coordinated UK and international sanctions. President Zelensky says the situation in the city of Borodanka is significantly more dreadful than what happened in nearby Bucha, where civilians were killed by Russian soldiers. In the latest development footage from the city of Borodanka, which is close to the capital Kyiv, it shows an apartment block that's been razed to the ground. Officials reported that 26 bodies were found under debris. Russian forces have fully withdrawn from the north of Ukraine back into Belarus and Russia. That's the latest intelligence from the UK Ministry of Defence, and their assessment is that some of those soldiers, though, will be likely now to be moved to fight in the Donbas region. The intelligence says Russian forces are still shelling cities in the east and the south of Ukraine, and they're making further advances. Now, as of Tuesday this week, 12,000 Ukrainians had arrived in the UK. The Home Office says almost 11,000 came under the Ukraine Family Scheme and just over 1,000 people arrived through the Homes for Ukraine sponsorship programme. Almost 80,000 applications have been received by the Home Office from Ukrainians who want to come to the UK. So far, with just under 41,000 visas have been granted. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has described criticism about his wife's non-domicile tax status as unpleasant, telling the Sun newspaper she hasn't done anything wrong. Downing Street has denied claims that they leaked the information after those claims were made in the Telegraph that it was potentially a deliberate move to smear the Chancellor. Boris Johnson has failed to rule out another lockdown should a new coronavirus variant appear. Currently, hospital admissions in England due to COVID have reached the highest level since January of 2021. Well, speaking to GB News, the Prime Minister said he wouldn't take any options off the table in tackling the virus.
I can't rule out something, Esther. I can't, say that we wouldn't be forced to do non-pharmaceutical interventions again of the kind that we did. I think it would be irresponsible of any leader, in any democracy, to say that they're going to rule out something that could save life.
Boris Johnson was speaking with the Conservative MPs Esther McVey and Philip Davies. You can watch the full interview tomorrow on Saturday's Selection at 10 a.m. on GB News. Now let's look to some travel updates. And airports and airlines have been criticised by the Civil Aviation Authority for failing to recruit enough staff to actually meet recent demand for passenger travel. The body's chief executive, Richard Moriarty, has condemned disruption experienced by passengers who are trying to get away for the Easter holidays. He says late notice cancellations and excessive delays are distressing for customers, and they also have the potential to impact confidence levels across the industry. Today, Manchester Airport has asked passengers to prepare for long queues and to arrive 3 hours before their flight to avoid missing it. Scientists have successfully reversed the ageing process in human skin cells by 30 years. Researchers say they've been able to partly restore the function of older cells, as well as renew their biological age. Experts say the findings could revolutionise regenerative medicine. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flaren-Iman, and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up to kickstart your day, so here's what's on the menu.
Well, the man who murdered primary school teacher Sabina Nessa has been sentenced to life in prison and must serve a minimum of 36 years behind bars. We'll be live at the Old Bailey with all of the details.
Yes, Tower Bridge in London has been closed after Extinction Rebellion climate activists staged a protest demanding an end to the use of fossil fuels. Our reporter Paul Hawkins is there for us.
Get the scissors out. Anyway, Prime Minister Boris Johnson tells GB News he cannot rule out another lockdown in the future. We'll bring you that interview and speak to a political commentator about these PM's comments.
Yes, and the Ministry of Defence says Russian troops have fully withdrawn from northern Ukraine. This is as Volodymyr Zelensky says the destruction being uncovered in the recaptured town of Borodyanka is worse than had been seen in Bucha. We'll bring you the latest.
It's harrowing stuff. We've got all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. And, of course, you can get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Don't be shy.
The man who killed Sabina Nessa has been sentenced to life imprisonment to serve a minimum of at least 36 years behind bars after pleading guilty to her murder.
Kochi Selmaj from Eastbourne killed the school teacher in a park in south-east London last September as she walked to meet up with friends. Alice Porter has the latest.
On the 17th of September, the day of Sabina Nessa's murder, Selmaj checked into the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne after propositioning his estranged wife for sex in the car park. She refused. Hotel staff found his behaviour strange and called the police, but no action was taken. Selmaj later drove around 70 miles to Kidbrooke in south-east London. He has no known connection to the area. He saw Sabina Nessa walking through the park and struck her with a metal emergency traffic triangle around 34 times and then killed her by asphyxiation. A brutal killing which will forever haunt her family.
We had lost our sister. My parents had lost their daughter.
The murder took place 6 months after the killing of Sarah Everard and raised serious questions over women's safety in London. The police say Selmaj's killing of Sabina Nessa was sexually motivated. During the trial, it also emerged that Selmaj's wife had experienced domestic violence.
We spoke to his wife, who was clearly shocked and very upset by all of this. And it was during them quite sensitive interviews that she disclosed to police that she'd been previously assaulted by him, actually throttled on 3 separate occasions, matters which had not been previously reported to the police.
Police say Selmaj had no criminal record in the UK, nor in Albania, where he was from. And for someone to suddenly kill in this way is highly unusual. But today, justice is finally served for the murder of Sabina Nessa, a much-loved teacher described by her family as kind, generous, loving and determined. Alice Porter, GB News.
I mean, it's harrowing stuff, isn't it? And terrifying, frankly, as well, to think that this chap, people like him as well, are out and about. Although, of course, he's not anymore. Our London reporter, Alice Porter, joins us now outside the Old Bailey. Thank you very much, Alice. For people who are just joining us, I suppose, would you mind just giving us the latest?
Yeah, of course. Well, the prosecution had asked for a life sentence with a minimum term served of 30 years. But today, Judge Mr. Sweeney, he actually put forward a minimum term of 36 years. And the reason he did is because he accepted what the prosecution had put forward was that this was an attack which had sexual conduct. And that was all because he'd booked into a hotel on the night of Sabina Ness's murder. He propositioned his ex-wife for sex. He'd actually driven around Brighton. The prosecution say he was looking for a woman to have sex with, whether consensual or not, and then driving on to southeast London where he attacked Sabina Nessa. And they said that her body she was sexually assaulted, her underwear and tights were removed. They've never been found. She was found with her legs open, and some of those harrowing details of the case allowed the judge to make a decision that this had a sexual conduct to it, and that is why he increased the minimum term to 36 years. He also listened to what the defence said in terms of the fact that he had no criminal record, but said but actually he'd had a history of domestic violence towards his now ex-wife, and therefore he wanted to take that into account in regards to the sentencing. So he will receive a life sentence with a minimum term of 36 years. The judge also pointed out that Selimaj chose not to attend court yesterday nor today, and whilst he did plead guilty later on, he did not initially, and when he was speaking with police he was consistently saying no answer, and they sort of said that was initially very uncooperative, and only later decided to plead to not guilty, and that's why he has received this sentence today. In terms of the reaction from their family, they'll obviously be pleased by the sentence, but it was a very emotional scenes in court, particularly yesterday when the victim impact statements were read out from the family. But I hope that at last, after this 6 months since the killing of Sabina Nessa on the 17th of September, that the family may feel that at last some justice has been served for the murder of Sabina Nessa.
Thank you very much, Alice Porter there, our London reporter. And of course, this guy couldn't even front up in court, could he? He just cowered away in his prison cell, which he's going to be spending a lot of time in for the next 36 years. Alice, thank you very much. Right, moving away from that now. Tower Bridge is still closed after climate activists staged a protest. Our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, joins us with the latest. Paul, I take it that no one's got the scissors out just yet, have they?
Yeah, hi Patrick. In the last 15 minutes, one of the two protesters that has been hanging off Tower Bridge has been taken away by the City of London police. If I just step out of shot, she was hanging from the right of the banner. There's actually a rope you can still see hanging off the bridge. What they did was they've managed to take her off the rope. The police then lower her onto a police boat, and then the boat came round in front of us and she was taken away by the authorities. But there is still one of the two protesters attached to the bridge to the left of the banner. As soon as he saw that his co-protester, if I can call it that, had been lowered onto the boat, he actually manoeuvred himself underneath the bridge, but he is now back hanging from the bridge. And actually you can see at the top of the rope just now there is a police officer with a red helmet on who appears to be attempting to climb over the bridge and then down to be with the man. So we assume that's how they're going to try and take the other protester away. So the police now currently in the middle of trying to take away that other protester. Both of those individuals have been here. They're from the Extinction Rebellion group. They've been here since 7 a.m. and they've closed the bridge to both traffic and pedestrians in both directions, causing huge problems to traffic around East London. And while the police are doing that, if I just come back into shot again and tell you about that Extinction Rebellion statement that was issued this morning. It says the action has taken place at the gateway to the City of London, the root source of fossil fuel funding in the UK, they say, and they say this is on the eve of the April Rebellion, which begins tomorrow at 10 a.m. in Hyde Park. They also say that this marks a significant shift in tactics from non-violent civil disobedience to non-violent civil resistance tactics. And mentioned the timing of it coming after the British government published its energy strategy yesterday, which came in for a lot of criticism from environmental campaigners, from opposition parties, because they say it doesn't address the demand for energy in the UK. There was nothing in there about insulating homes, but the government was saying, well, this is just a supply side strategy document, and it talks about the long term. It's not there to address the short term. And of course, campaigners were unhappy that there was a lot in there about nuclear energy and about fracking and about oil and gas, and it doesn't move the UK away from fossil fuels immediately. And the significance of the banner, by the way, End Fossil Fuels Now, is because at the start of the week there was that kind of final warning report from the UN saying that governments around the world need to act now to reduce carbon emissions, to halve them by 2025, but they need to act now, and that window is closing if the world is going to meet that target of a 1.5 degrees Celsius reduction in global warming, so that it falls within levels that would not be too dangerous for everyone around the world.
Yes, Paul, thank you very much. Thank you for a very, very thorough report there on what's been going on at Tower Bridge and giving us the latest. Paul Hawkins there, our national reporter. So what we can see now is that one of them's gone. One of them's been lifted, which is quite nice.
Yes, I wonder why they chose that tactic. Rather
I wonder why they do anything this lot, really.
That's true. Well, there's a lot of GB views coming in discussing a range of different things that we've been talking about. Someone in relation to the protesters have said, Sharon has said, make them pay for all the public services that has been used to remove them, then stick them in jail for 5 years.
Yeah, right, OK. Protesters cut the rope from Dennis. There's a lot of rope cutting going around in the inbox at the moment, of course. We couldn't condone such a thing.
Quite a lot of people talking about the killer of Sabrina Nessa.
Yes.
Mentioning the fact that we're going to have to pay for him for 36 years, and some people are describing the prison system right now as too luxurious, in a sense that a lot of the time that they get a lot of comforts, and is that something that we should be paying for 36 years? I think that is an interesting point, though. When you look at countries that have much more harsher systems for prisoners, where, for example, they barely, have a toilet or anything like that. Again, it's not clear to me that necessarily means that they are less likely to commit those crimes. But I guess is on that same point about should the focus be punishment or rehabilitation. I mean, it is strange when you see some of these stories that come out every now and then that some prisoners end up on phones, playing video games and all sorts of things that some people that are not in prison don't even have.
No, exactly. And also, drug dealing and things like that. I mean, people are going to be incentivised now to go on drug-free wards. And you think, well, hang on a minute, if we can't stop drug dealing within a prison, then we've got absolutely no chance of it being stopped in wider society. Quite a lot of people raising the same issue when it comes to Salamaj, the individual who obviously murdered Sarah Nessa. He should be deported to serve his sentence in Albanian jail. There's a lot of this going about. Bet their prisons are not as cushy. And there is a point in that, actually. Sorry, Sabina Nessa, apologies. I got the name wrong there. It's an interesting point. Why is he here?
Yeah, I think that is a good point. Even if we pay him to be in an Albanian prison, whilst having him still deported, that is something that we should look at, and that has been something that has been done by British authorities in the past, that they will deport them and actually they'll serve their sentence in a prison of their own home country. So I do think that is a very interesting point to look at.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, look, keep these views coming in, everybody. Bit of a heavy show today, to be fair, but, that's the way it is sometimes. But after the break, Rishi Sunak's under fire wife. Yeah, that's right. We'll explain why his wife is in hot water. But first, it's the weather.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The weekend will be fine and dry for most, and that's what we've got today. It's still pretty cold out there, however, the wind's perhaps not quite as strong as the past couple of days. And it's not dry and fine everywhere. This area of low pressure has been scooting its way up through the channel, bringing some wet conditions along the south coast. Certainly a pretty grim day across the Channel Isles, wet and at times quite windy here. But that rain is edging away from the south coast. Many places dry and bright. We still have a cold wind blowing, particularly across the northeast, where we'll see some sleet showers, some snow over the hills. A few rain showers developing across southern England this afternoon as that wetter weather clears away. And for many, as I said, it's dry and it's bright. Temperatures below average for the time of year, still feeling pretty chilly, but out of the breeze, we might get up to 13 Celsius in the south. That wind, though, is still strong and still cold across the northeast. Still further snow showers over the high ground here into low levels. Showers could mean some icy conditions as well. The potential for a few showers across the southeast during the evening and overnight, but for many it becomes dry and clear. and temperatures certainly across northern Britain, much of Wales will drop in rural areas down below freezing. So again, it could be icy across northeast Scotland as the showers keep coming in here on Saturday. A few showers dotted around elsewhere, parts of Wales and particularly northwest Scotland turning a little wetter through the day. But for the vast majority, it's another dry, bright day with some good spells of sunshine, but it is still on the chilly side with temperatures struggling to get much beyond double figures, maybe 13 across the south. But again, those winds are lighter than they have been over recent days. Light winds and clear skies will allow frost to form for many as we head through Saturday night and into Sunday. Still some wet weather across Scotland, still some sleet and snow mixed in here. For many, Sunday starts with a frost, but again dry and bright, although it will cloud over in the west later. Maybe a few spots of rain for Northern Ireland. Signs of things getting warmer next week.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Good morning, it's 11, well, it's about to go 11:22. Actually, this is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Naya Falarin-Iman on GB News Live, as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has told GB News he would not rule out another lockdown. In an interview with Esther McVeigh and Philip Davies, the Prime Minister was asked about the last 2 years of COVID restrictions and the UK's ambition for the future. Here's what he had to say.
I can't rule out something, Esther. I can't, say that we wouldn't be forced to do non-pharmaceutical interventions again of the kind that we did, but I think we've learnt a lot, and I think we would really try to go for the earliest possible programme of inoculation and vaccination. I mean, that was
the lockdowns again.
Look, I think it would be irresponsible of any leader, in any democracy, to say that they're going to rule out something that could save life. And I believe that the things that we did saved lives. There could be, I've got to be absolutely frank with you, there could be a new variant, more deadly. There could be a variant that affects children badly, that we really need to contain. I'm not going to take any options off the table.
Great. And you can watch the exclusive interview with Prime Minister in full on the Saturday's election tomorrow at 10 a.m. right here on GB News.
Indeed. Well, joining us now for his thoughts is Albi Amankona, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Great to have you back on the airwaves, Albi. I must say, it's been a while since you and I last caught up. But, well, look, what do you make of... Well, so start with Boris Johnson's lockdown issues, I suppose, first and foremost. I suppose he kind of has to say he can't indefinitely rule out a lockdown, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most poignant part of that interview that I heard just there, Patrick, was when he said it would be irresponsible for the leader of a democracy to rule out something which could save lives. I think that was probably the right line to take. No one wants to go into another lockdown, but I think we're probably in a place where that's looking unlikely, which is indeed what he goes on to say. And everyone very much hopes that doesn't happen. But I think it would be irresponsible for the Prime Minister to rule out something which could save lives.
Absolutely. Well, let's just move away from Boris Johnson and the lockdown issue and focus a bit more on Rishi Sunak and some of the criticism of his wife. Is it all in good faith, do you think?
I think it's interesting that you pose the question about good faith. One of the lines that Rishi Sunak has been taking is that he's sort of suffering from a hit job on him, a hatch job on him. And there are allegations flying around Whitehall that it's like someone's either tipped off the Labour Party or perhaps it's come from Number 10. And he will have had to have declared his wife's financial interest when he became a minister at the Department for Housing and Local Governments. There will have been a handful of permanent secretaries and other advisors across Whitehall in the Treasury and the Department for Housing who will have known about this.
I mean, I've heard some criticism that there's an element of sexism involved. What do you think, Albi? You know, she's a very successful, independent woman of colour, and why is she being targeted for effectively being wealthy and successful? Do you buy that criticism at all?
I find it difficult to see where race and sex come into this, to be honest. I think the issue is around people's views on the morality of whether or not it's right that someone who lives on Downing Street is essentially participating in totally legal tax avoidance. And I think that is really where there are the differing points of view. I don't really see how her sex, gender or success come into this at all.
I mean, do you think that Rishi Sunak can come back from this? I mean, during the time of furlough, he was considered the magic money tree man, and very quickly, under what to some extent people would regard as relatively minor criticisms, he is coming under a lot of pressure, and his poll rating is toppling. I mean, if you look at some of the criticism Boris Johnson's had over the last, his political career has been significantly more shocking than Rishi Sunak, but this seems to be impacting Rishi quite a lot.
I do think Rishi Sunak can come back from this. I'm a big supporter of Rishi Sunak. I think what he needs to be is honest and transparent about the situation, and quite frankly, the statement that his wife's spokesperson made earlier on this week, where she linked Mrs. Sunak's non-dom status to her Indian citizenship, has actually made the situation worse. They need to be clear about where the tax is being paid. If it's being paid in India, my understanding is that the tax rates are actually quite similar. So they need to be honest and transparent about things, because at the moment the picture is not very clear, and we need transparency.
Albi, great stuff as always. Albi Amankona, their co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. I mean, one thing's for sure about the tax with Rishi Sunak and his wife is we have a show here, don't we, called You're on the Money. They're definitely in the money, but it's okay. We're going to go over now.
I just wanted to say, I just think that if he wants to be Prime Minister, if that is his ambitions, then he's got to expect a significant level of scrutiny, and I think this is just part of it.
Good stuff. Well, we're going to just head over to Rosie Wright now, I believe, who's got a little bit of an update for us.
Good Good morning, it's 11:27. I'm Rosie Wright. We've got a developing story for you and we can go live to Tower Bridge. At least one person has been arrested after climate activists staged a protest. It's caused significant disruption this morning. Our national reporter Paul Hawkins is there live for us. Paul, a very good morning to you. Police on the scene and making arrests.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, one arrest so far. Let me just step out a shot to show you what is happening right now, Rosie. So this is a protest that's been going on since 7 a.m. Two people hanging themselves from Tower Bridge by ropes that were tied to the bridge. And what you're looking at now is the City of London Police pulling up a banner that's been there since 7 a.m. that said "End fossil fuels now." So they're starting to pull the banner in, and you can see the protester to the left of the banner there. He's being accompanied by two City of London police officers, both of them wearing red helmets. It seems they're trying to pull this protester up. The other protester that was to the right of the banner earlier was lowered onto a riverboat, a police riverboat, and was taken away and arrested. But that protester, it appears, they are trying to pull him up, and there is a police riverboat waiting at the moment. So that banner currently being pulled in, and the protester to the left, the police are currently trying to, it appears, to bring him to the top of the bridge as opposed to lowering him down onto a riverboat. So it looks like this demonstration won't be going on for too much longer. One would have thought within the next half an hour it could be done and dusted. But as you say, one woman has been arrested so far. The City of London Police have said nothing else, no other word on whether she's been charged with any offences, but she has been arrested and taken away. This protest by Extinction Rebellion, they say, marking a significant change in their tactics from disobedience to resistance, and simply put, as the banner itself says, they want an end to fossil fuels. Now, the timing of the protest coming after the UK government produced its energy strategy yesterday, which came in for some significant criticism. It didn't address the issues of energy demand, for example. There was nothing in it about insulating homes. There was still a lot in it about nuclear energy, about fracking, about oil and gas, and that's why a lot of campaign groups like Extinction Rebellion were unhappy.
Paul, this has had the real potential to snarl up parts of the centre of London. How are things moving?
Well, at the moment, the bridge remains closed in both directions to both traffic and pedestrians, so it is causing huge problems, and traffic is kind of gridlocked in the build-up to the bridge and on the surrounding areas. That said, the protest has been in place now for 4 hours, so many people are aware that the bridge is closed and that there is significant disruption, and they're being advised to take alternative routes, but still very difficult for people to get across the bridge into the north of Tower Bridge, which, for those who don't know London, it is a financial centre. So actually, if I just step out of shot at the moment, Rosie, you can just see the police are actually going for the tactic of lowering the demonstrator down onto the police boat. So if I just step out of shot a little bit more, you can see that two police officers, you can identify them by their red headgear. They're lowering that protester there onto the boat, and I think it's 2 or 3 police officers on the riverboat are now taking the demonstrator in there, and then they'll bring him around to the jetty that's just below us here, and he will be taken away. I believe it is a man there. Previously a woman was taken away from the bridge, but you can see that one police officer still remains on the rope there, and he is going to bring himself up possibly, or lower himself down onto the riverboat. But it seems that the demonstration is now ending on Tower Bridge. That banner almost completely brought back up to the top of the bridge by the police. It's pretty much disappeared now, to be honest. You can't really read what was on it. And there we go. There's the final police officer lowered onto the police boat, the riverboat, and he'll be taken. They'll be taking that demonstrator in to be arrested by the police. So effectively, I think we can say now that demonstration over. It wasn't even half an hour, it was more like 3 minutes, to be honest, Rosie, but the demonstration now over on Tower Bridge, and we await to hear from the City of London whether those two people will be charged with any offences.
passers-by applauding as well. Paul Hawkins, thank you very much, our national reporter at one of London's most iconic locations where Extinction Rebellion have certainly been making their presence known today. Paul, thank you very much. Right now it's 11:32. We'll be keeping you up to date with all the developing stories today on GB News. Don't forget, we're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Don't go anywhere. To the point, we'll be back shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
It's 11:35. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin Iman and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Well, now, at least 30 people have died and 100 people have been wounded after Russian missiles struck a railway station in Ukraine's eastern city of Kramatorsk. Now, the city's mayor said that the station was busy with thousands of refugees attempting to flee at the time of the attack, with the number of victims expected to rise. And indeed, well, look, I've seen several pictures of that scene, and we obviously are not going to be able to show you too many of them, just on account of how graphic they are. But yeah, there's a lot of people who've died, and that's immediately obvious. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says this attack is just the latest example of Russia's evil has no limits. Yes, well, yes. Mike Tapp, I believe, is joining us, I think, a former military and intelligence officer. And he's joining us now. Mike, yeah, look, I mean, basically, it looks as though Russia has bombed a place with about several thousand refugees in it.
Yeah, it's awful, isn't it? And, you know, war is, as we know, brutal. But the whole idea of the Geneva Conventions is to, you know, try and minimise that brutality and protect civilians and, you know, injured troops and the prisoners of war. But what we're seeing from Russia doesn't surprise me, unfortunately. We've you know, Vladimir Putin rules in this way. This is what we've seen from the history, you know, carpet bombing in Syria, the massacres of civilians in Grozny, shooting down of civilian flights, poisoning of his opposition figures, and of course the reckless criminal weapons, chemical weapons attack that we saw on the streets of Britain. So unfortunately, it's not surprising, but hopefully he will be held to account.
I mean, on that point that it may not be surprising, isn't it to an extent a reality of war? I mean, when the norms and civilization disintegrates, it often creates the conditions both for extremist political ideologies to flourish, but often the most sickening and brutal behaviour of human beings.
War is two nations against each other, two governments often two leaders. And civilians, unfortunately, are caught in the middle of that. So the whole idea of the Geneva Conventions is to try and minimise that impact on civilians. And we are seeing Vladimir Putin and the Russians, unfortunately, using civilians to essentially shock them into surrender, which is, of course, not going to work in Ukraine.
No, it's not going to work in Ukraine. And I think we could all learn a lot from the resilience and the attitude of the Ukrainian people in the face of what's been going on over there. The sad reality, though, Mike, is that this is going to get worse before it gets better, isn't it?
Unfortunately, you may well be right there. The Russians are relatively cornered here. Their military operation has failed. Generals are dying. Vladimir Putin is isolated. NATO is stronger than ever and united. So unfortunately, that may well lead to more atrocities and war crimes from the Russians.
You say that NATO is united, though, but is it really? I mean, we have been seeing a lot of fractures over the last few weeks in relation to further sanctions on Russia. We know that Germany is incredibly dependent. I mean, there's been some information that's come out that just in the last month since the invasion, to the tunes of tens of billions of pounds, the European Union have paid to Russia. Or, some people arguing that they're effectively bankrolling this invasion because of their dependence on energy. So is it really accurate to say that NATO is united on this?
Absolutely. This could have gone a very different way. We may well have not had NATO bolstering its borders as it is and supplying lethal aid to Ukraine at such high rates. Obviously, the Ukrainians want more weapons, and hopefully NATO will deliver on that.
Yeah, and of course, talk of Finland joining or trying to join ASAP, basically. Just, Mike, as your capacity as a former military and intelligence officer, I'm quite keen to pick your brains about the intelligence that Vladimir Putin received and why it may have been so way off the mark. The understanding is that he was led to believe that it would be a bit of a walkover, potentially, certainly a lot less difficult, than it's been so far. Did that come from fear or from genuinely bad intelligence?
I would suggest it's predominantly through fear. And that's what happens when you rule with an iron fist and your generals are scared of you and his inner circle are sycophants who have to say what they think he wants to hear. And that filters all the way down to, the GRU and the military analysts who unfortunately will be scared of saying the wrong thing, which is obviously played into the hands of the Ukrainians, and the Russians have been completely unequipped to conduct this invasion.
Well, thank you, Mike Tapp, former military and intelligence officer. Thank you for giving us your thoughts on what's going on in Ukraine.
Yeah, and just to emphasise again, sorry, just quickly, just if you are just joining us, absolutely appalling images and videos emerging out of what's been taking place in Ukraine there. It looks as though, it's pretty convincing evidence to say this has happened, that Russia has deliberately targeted a train station with thousands of people trying to flee the war in it, and the casualties there are going to be incredibly high.
It is interesting, the question you asked about bad intelligence or fear, and how Mike Tapp talked about fear, but I think sometimes we underestimate the profound rise in nationalistic feeling that has actually come about in Russia. Many people have underestimated it, including myself, and I've watched many videos of interviews from ordinary Russian people. The polls are very high in terms of support for what Vladimir Putin is doing, and the narrative that they have internalized, that of denazification and some of these incredibly propagandistic and frankly lies that have been put forward by Putin's regime. So I'm not sure it is always fear. I think some people may well have embraced a deeply nationalistic feeling within Russia.
Yeah, I suspect so, actually. I suspect so. Right, well, just moving away from Russia, something a little bit closer to home anyway. Hundreds of thousands of Brits will be jetting off on holiday tomorrow as airports gear up for the busiest weekend of the Easter break.
For more, let's go to Will Hollis, GBNews East Midlands reporter, who is live for us at East Midlands Airport. I mean, what's the situation where you are? Because we did have, a report earlier in the week from Manchester where there was a lot of chaos when it came to people travelling and so on. So is it a different story or not?
Yes, earlier this week we've seen the scenes at Manchester and at Birmingham and at London Heathrow as well, where people have been waiting in long queues, up to 3 hours waits, sometimes more, often waiting a long time just to go through security checks. Lots of difficulties in some of those bigger airports, but where I am at East Midlands Airport, which is sandwiched right between Leicester, Derby and Nottinghamshire, it's not really that case. The people that I've been speaking to who are behind the scenes are saying that they've been very lucky that they haven't been slammed with some of those COVID staff shortages. They've still got a good amount of staff, despite there being an industry problem where many people are out of jobs. They've got many places where they don't have people working because of the effects of the pandemic. Now, we know that it's specifically affecting EasyJet and, of course, British Airways flights. They don't fly any EasyJet from here. The one flight that they did do until recently that went to Belfast has now stopped. It's mainly Jet2 that fly out of East Midlands. So, no, we're not seeing those big problems. We're seeing a massive amount of people coming through here, though. The most people that are coming through here since the start of the pandemic, 5,000 departing passengers today alone, 20,000 departing passengers this weekend, and 250,000 coming in and out of this airport over the Easter break. So while there is still a large volume of people coming through this airport over the Easter break, we're not seeing the same problems, which people are feeling quite lucky for. But they do say that if they do get slammed by those COVID sicknesses, it could be a very similar situation.
Absolutely. Will, look, thank you very much. Just stay there, because I want to know, you're at an airport, right? You're seeing all the destinations coming up. You're seeing people go on holiday. Where would Will Hollis go on holiday if he could go anywhere in the world right now?
Do you know what? I would love to go to Austria. I think Vienna is a fantastic place, a fantastic culture. When I did my kind of gap year travelling, where I went around Europe, I was such a fool that I just went through there on the train because I was in such a rush to get to Germany and to get to the Netherlands that I didn't appreciate how beautiful Austria was. On the other hand, though, there's nothing like some summer sunshine, and I would kill to go to Spain too.
Fantastic, mate. All right, look, good stuff. Thank you very much for yet another cracking report. Will Hollis there, GBNews' East Midlands reporter, live from East Midlands Airport.
What about you?
Where would I go? Where would I go? Where would I go? I had one of the best holidays ever in the Azores, and I would like to go back there, I think. Or maybe going and looking at blue whales off Sri Lanka.
My favourite holiday was 3 months in Cambodia. It was absolutely amazing, and I would love to go to Japan this year or next year.
Yeah.
That would be a big holiday. But they've still got a lot of COVID restrictions, so until that's alleviated, then I might have to do a more local holiday.
Yeah, I have got to be really honest with you, though, just quickly. The place that's top of my bucket list is North Korea. I want to see the show.
I know a couple of people that have visited.
Yeah. I want to see. I want to be lied to from start to finish. I just want to see how mad it is. But anyway, right. Shift in tone, everybody. Very much a shift in tone. Accusations of mass rape by Russian soldiers have been flying around since the horrific situations in Bucha and other Ukrainian towns came to light this week.
Here to explain how and why rape is still considered a weapon of war in the 21st century is Christina Lamb, OBE, author of Our Bodies, Their Battlefield, What War Does to Women, and chief foreign correspondent for the Sunday Times. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about this incredibly serious story. I mean, why is rape still used? I mean, we know that in the 20th century you had the rape of Nanking, which was absolutely horrendous, but you would have hoped that this will no longer be part and parcel of war, given the Geneva Convention and all of the rules around war that have been put in place. But clearly, from the evidence that is being developing, that's not necessarily the case.
Well, as you said, I mean, there's always been rape in war. You go right back to the ancient Greeks and Romans and Persians, and there was a lot of rape in the Second World War, particularly at the end of the Second World War during the liberation of Berlin by Russian soldiers, when as many as 2 million German women are estimated to have been raped. But I have to say, my job is to be foreign correspondent, mostly covering war and conflict. And in the last 6 or 7 years, I have seen far more use of rape in war than in any previous years. So it's a huge problem. And we're talking a lot about it now because of Ukraine, but you know, it's happening in many other places around the world.
Yeah, is it a power thing? Is it kind of a very on-the-nose way of expressing dominance and this, that and the other? Is that an element of it, do you think?
I think it's a mixture of things. A lot of the cases that I looked at, for example, what happened to the Yazidi girls captured by Islamic State soldiers in Iraq, or the girls taken in Nigeria by Boko Haram fighters, such as the Chibok girls who were captured from their school in the middle of the night. And then you also had the Rohingya women in 2017 in Burma that were fled to Bangladesh because their villages were being attacked by Burmese soldiers. In all of these cases, rape was actually used as a weapon of war, where the fighters were actually told to go and rape the women. And it's sadly a very effective weapon. If you want to humiliate your enemy and force them out of a place, raping the women and girls is an effective way of doing it. It's also very cheap. One militia told me it's the cheapest weapon. It's cheaper than a Kalashnikov bullet. But I think in this case, in Ukraine, we don't yet know whether it is something that was ordered or whether it's something happening in the chaos, or whether the Russian soldiers, feel frustrated because they didn't achieve what they had set out to, so we're taking it out on the people living there.
And is it part of that process of just demoralisation of the population? I mean, you mentioned Nigeria and other countries. What impact does it have for those societies when people, feel that they've been violated, their kind of soul and body, have been used as a weapon for somebody else?
Well, most of the women I spoke to actually said that they would rather have died than what happened to them. That is, what it does to people. It's not just the physical damage and also the emotional trauma that, will never go away. But also in some cases, the women are ostracized from their communities as a result of it. Rape is the one crime where the victim is often made to feel that they did something wrong. And so there's a lot of stigma attached. And so, it's a really most terrible thing that can happen. And it is a war crime. And frankly, you asked earlier why it's happening so much. One of the reasons is because we're not prosecuting it. People are getting away with it.
Indeed, and it is sickening, and the increasing amount of testimony that's coming out of various different Ukrainian towns and villages and cities at the moment indicates that this is a concerted campaign of rape that appears to be taking place in that country. Christina, thank you very much for your time today, as always. Great to have you on the show. Christina Lamb, OBE, author of Our Bodies, Their Battlefield, What War Does to Women. Also, of course, very, very high up at the Sunday Times as well. But I think, let's not finished on too much of a depressing story, shall we? It is Friday, of course, and I believe we've got something else in the can.
Yes, well, as if mushrooms didn't seem magical enough, researchers now believe they can talk to each other. This after a study of the electrical activity of 4 species of fungi found that their electrical impulses are structurally similar to human speech and resemble a rudimentary vocabulary of about 50 words.
This is so cool.
I actually, I've done multiple mushroom foraging courses of wild food. I'm very interested in wild food, and mushrooms is one of them. One of the ones that I forage, which is actually quite a rare one, it's called chicken of the woods, and it's this orange mushroom, and it's actually called that because when you fry it, it has a bit of a chicken texture, but it's got a lemony taste. Oyster mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, all of that, I'm here for it.
Wow, gosh, I'll tell you what, you are really a very layered individual, aren't you? Mushroom foraging in your spare time. I went mushroom foraging a couple of times, but when I was at university. Researchers say that the average length, apparently, of a mushroom word is 5.97 letters, showing that fungi have minds and a consciousness. Hang on a minute now. So vegans, you can't eat them.
Well, that is true. Well, they do have very interesting effects depending on what the mushroom you're...
Be careful what mushroom you take.
Exactly. I mean, there is... It's crazy. There's one called Destroying Angel. Right. And the death cap, because even just a little bit could poison you and you could die from it. Yeah, there's so many different types of mushrooms. It's really fascinating.
They are. I mean, they are incredible things, mushrooms, aren't they? It's a phrase I never thought I'd say on national television. But so we're learning. Yeah, if you're just joining us, I know this might seem a little bit strange, but apparently mushrooms can actually talk to each other.
That is pretty brilliant. And apparently in ancient times, like this is hundreds of thousands of years ago, fungi were about this high. So literally they're about 2-3 foot tall.
Really?
Yeah.
So you'd have to kind of hack it down. I
No,
mean,
but we weren't alive then. Human beings didn't exist at that point.
Oh, yeah, OK, fair enough. Yes, my concept of human history is clearly way off. But you are a font of all mushroom-based knowledge, apparently. So can I ask what you do when you go foraging for mushrooms? Do you just take yourself off to the woods?
Yeah, you know, I'll take a little basket, like Little Red Riding Hood.
Do you actually do
brown
that?
one. And I have a couple books, and if I find one, I'll look on the book, and if it's one that's edible, I'll pick it, and then I'll eat it at home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a life you lead.
Learn something new.
OK, well, let's finish with some comments from our wonderful viewers, our wonderful listeners as well, and people, of course, who can watch us on YouTube online. Go on.
Paul Day said you can't eat things that talk. So that's similar. Vegans shouldn't be eating mushrooms.
Vegans should not be eating mushrooms anymore, neither should vegetarians. That's a fact, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Someone said no mushroom in the studio today.
No mushroom in the studio.
Unfortunately not.
No.
Many people still talking about Rishi Sunak's wife. Some people, are saying that, we're being a bit too harsh on her.
Yeah, this is over the non-dom status, isn't it? So basically, apparently, Rishi Sunak's wife claims essentially to be based abroad, etc., etc., etc. Saves a lot of money on tax. That said, they are wealthy people, so they probably already do pay quite a lot of money in tax. But then the optics of it, isn't it? Cost of living crisis, we're all getting poorer. It's not a great look. Serious question marks as well about who's briefed this out to the press. Actually, was it number 10? Was it Boris's team? They've moved to deny that. But it all looks like it's hotting up between Chancellor and PM, doesn't it?
And Jeffrey has mentioned my earlier mentioning of a woman of colour. He said that would you call saying that we wouldn't say a pink man?
I've just never really had to. I don't think. It's just not really, never really been called upon to have made that kind of comment, really. I suppose, but yeah. Anyway,
many views coming in on a range of different subjects that we've been talking about.
Lovely stuff. All right, well, OK, look, ladies and gentlemen, next week on Wednesday, the 13th of April, we need your help. So we are handing our show over to you. It's a big announcement, this, OK? So we want to know what you think are the most important stories. Tell us the subjects that you want covered, and we will build an entire show just around that. It's your show, it's your day, Wednesday next week. So get these ideas coming in, OK? You can get in touch, patrick@gbnews.uk, or you can go straight through to the gbviews@gbnews.uk box.
Tweet.
Or you can tweet us at GBNews. I'm probably more likely to see it if you send it to me there. patrick@gbnews.uk. Get it all in there. We want to build a show around you. There is, of course, another email address as well, tothepoint@gbnews.uk. So you can't really miss for emails. There we go.
Oh, brilliant. And what's on this evening?
Oh, yes, right, OK. So tonight, 7 till 9 p.m, Friday night feast with me, Patrick Christys. Now, you're not going to want to miss this one, OK? Because I'm laying down a very, very serious challenge. So you need to do it. You need to watch it.
And also the discussion, 3 to 4 p.m. this Sunday, the discussion with me.
Absolutely, seriously, you're not going to be disappointed this evening. Tune in. Up next, though, it's the briefing with the one and only Tom Harwood.
Tomorrow from 10 a.m, get set for a GB News exclusive interview with Prime Minister Boris Johnson as two of his most rebellious MPs put him on the spot. Brexit, COVID, and now the reality of war. How does the Prime Minister look back on the past 2 years? And what can he say about having been so close to death?
I then had a pretty groggy night and went down even lower.
An exclusive interview with Prime Minister Boris Johnson tomorrow from 10 a.m. on GB News.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The weekend will be fine and dry for most, and that's what we've got today. It's still pretty cold out there, however. The wind's perhaps not quite as strong as the past couple of days. And it's not dry and fine everywhere. This area of low pressure has been scooting its way up through the channel, bringing some wet conditions along the south coast. Certainly a pretty grim day across the Channel Isles, wet and at times quite windy here. But that rain is edging away from the south coast. Many places dry and bright. We still have a cold wind blowing, particularly across the northeast, where we'll see some sleet showers, some snow over the hills. A few rain showers developing across southern England this afternoon as that wetter weather clears away. And for many, as I said, it's dry and it's bright. Temperatures below average for the time of year, still feeling pretty chilly, but out of the breeze, we might get up to 13 Celsius in the south. That wind, though, is still strong and still cold across the northeast. Still further snow showers over the high ground here into low levels. Showers could mean some icy conditions as well. A potential for a few showers across the southeast during the evening and overnight, but for many it becomes dry and clear. and temperatures certainly across northern Britain, much of Wales will drop in rural areas down below freezing. So again, it could be icy across northeast Scotland as the showers keep coming in here on Saturday. A few showers dotted around elsewhere, parts of Wales and particularly northwest Scotland turning a little wetter through the day. But for the vast majority, it's another dry, bright day with some good spells of sunshine, but it is still on the chilly side with temperatures struggling to get much beyond double figures, maybe 13 across the south. But again, those winds are lighter than they have been over recent days. Light winds and clear skies will allow frost to form for many as we head through Saturday night and into Sunday. Still some wet weather across Scotland, still some sleet and snow mixed in here. For many, Sunday starts with a frost, but again dry and bright, although it will cloud over in the west later. Maybe a few spots of rain for Northern Ireland. Signs of things getting warmer next week.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond